Right, and we're live. Again, so thank you everyone for attending. We're live here at the Bard Stevenson Library, and today we have Nakia Hardgrove and her book, uh, Mama. Well,
Your subtitles.
no, I can't see. But good evening, and I know that you like to start everything off with reading an excerpt. So why don't you go ahead and read the excerpt, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the interview.
Excellent. I like meat too. Um, Thank you all for coming out. It is chilly and messy out there, so thank you. I am going to read an excerpt from chapter 4, and it is well, for those of you who don't know, the book is about my journey into motherhood. It's my memoir, and I open the book with my traveling to pick up the son that I now call my son. And so the part that I'm going to read is our first night home from the hospital. On our first night home from the hospital, I had no idea what to expect. Lady helped me, of course, showing me how to open the tiny flaps of a newborn baby's diaper and how to avoid confusing the front with the back. She pointed out where the blue line would appear in the diaper, indicating Jonathan had peed. Told me the sure sign told me the sure sign of a bowel movement would be the smell. I needed all 5 of my senses on duty. As we sat side by side in her dimly lit kitchen, she taught me how to prepare Jonathan's bottle. With each movement, I heard the white linoleum floor creak beneath our feet. Her instructions were given quickly, in keeping with the bluntness of her personality, and her words came through with the confidence of a mother who'd done all of this many, many times. If he wakes up at night, make sure you don't put him in the bed with you. Make sure you don't put his diaper on too tight. You cannot sleep deeply because you won't hear him cry. Those first few nights, Jonathan didn't need much more than someone he could count on to feed him, bathe him, clothe him, and keep him safe. My confidence grew with each passing day, while my role in his life went from caregiver to something more. I knew how to attend to his basic needs, but inside, I was conflicted about allowing myself to fully feel like his mother, because his biological mother was very much alive. Even before he'd been released from the hospital, everything in his short life was already complicated. Child protective services, my family, everyone had an opinion about who this tiny baby boy should live with, including me. I wanted him, but nothing about his future could be settled permanently until a decision by CPS about whether my mother could be sober and prove herself capable. So really, at least for now, he legally belonged to the state, even if it was temporary, I hope. My grandmother had been especially clear that she did not want to have the burden of raising my mother's child. Nanny knew the sacrifices I'd need to make. She made the same for me. She stayed up late with me, comforting me when I couldn't breathe. She provided for me even when she didn't have the money. She used credit cards so I would not go without. My grandparents treated me as if they'd birthed me into this world, sacrificing for me and my needs and for going their own. Nanny had turned her home into our home. She'd done the same for my siblings, Danny and Sierra, through elementary school before they both went to live with Shishi and her husband, Steve. As soon as Jonathan was born, my grandmother had begun calling family members across the United States, begging them to take him in and keep him out of foster care. I cannot raise another one of her kids, I overheard her saying on the phone. I'm getting too old to run after a baby. I didn't interfere with the calls and requests, but had already made plans to fight for Jonathan. I didn't think my mother could mother anyone, but I was still hopeful that I was wrong and thought that maybe, together, we would raise Jonathan.
Now, how does that feel? How does that feel being a student here? many moons ago and now reading that as an author? How did that feel?
Does feel like many moons ago, for sure. I don't know. It's a little surreal. So the book was born out of my thesis. So I went to my board and presented my thesis to my 3 professors. And one professor in particular, when I left, he was like, I pay to read this. And I was like, what? And that has never left me. And he blurbed the book. So that's what's
Wow. Like that.
So it feels different and it feels really good to be holding
Right. Yeah.
this baby. Yeah.
Right, I like that. I like that answer. Yeah. All right. So let's before we get into the book, right? Let's start with you. And I kind of know the answer to this question and stuff, knowing you for agent, right? Right. But when someone asks you now, what do you do? What you are? What do you say?
I pause because I do so many things. I wouldn't call myself an author first. I think I would say that I am a mom first, right? And so if I think of all of my titles, I usually start with mom.
God.
But it wasn't until I went on book tour for this book that I started calling myself an author.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like completely nervous before book tour. And so on my book tour, I went to 10 different stops: Atlanta, Virginia, Maryland. And in preparation for the tour, I was talking to my in-law, who published many books, and he said to me, you're you're going out now to sell the book. And that's when you call yourself an author.
Right.
Because you're a writer who got the book out there. And now the author needs to be the one to sell the book.
Like that, I heard that before.
And I was like, huh? I get it now. Knowing how much the author is responsible for, even after the book is finished.
Okay. So starting here, right? As a freshman in the HEOP program, what has surprised you the most about where you landed right now?
I think that things are still hard in a different way, right? So when I was a student at Bard, it was 2001. We were together, and not together. Same program, and my mom was in prison when I started at Bard, and she was released the year that I graduated.
Got you.
And I went to pick her up from prison. The prison since closed down. It's Bayview Correctional Facility in New York. Um, and so fast forward, she's passed away. Spoiler alert for you all who haven't read the book yet. But she passed away. And so life is different, very, very different now. I never actually thought I would get to publish a book.
Right.
And to sort of break into the world of writing, of freelancing, that happened back in 2012, 2013, thanks to a fellow Bardian, who I was friends with and still am. She was the editor-in-chief at Elle magazine. And she's like, we're doing this personal essay series, and I think you should write about Jonathan. And I was like, I don't know. It was the first big thing, and I did. And she published it. And that was I got the bug,
Right.
You see her name.
That's kind of where my next question was. Did you ever, during that time, and that's where you got the bug, during that time, did you ever imagine yourself that you were going to have a life in books and then the bookstore? And
No.
But how did all of that
No.
come about? Right.
No, I've always wanted to be
But
my
you don't
own
know Nakia has a bookstore in Connecticut.
Yes, I opened a bookstore in I opened a bookstore in September 2024, and my book came out in October 2024. And so I had 1 month at my little baby.
Right.
Yeah. And then I was off on book tour. So it was a busy year. I never thought I would open a book store necessarily. I've always wanted to, go to coffee shops and drink coffee and write. And I wanted to write full time.
Right.
I'm not doing that yet.
Yeah.
Still. Because I own a bookstore. But I'm very happy professionally. And prior to opening the bookstore, I worked in the nonprofit world.
You got it.
For even before I left Bard, I was.
That you don't miss.
Yeah. You said it, not me.
So now that the book is out in the world, and the title, the strong title, Mama, what does that word mean to you now?
Well, guys, I got a tattoo for the first time, and it's called, and it's Mama. Oh. And so Mama is what my mom used to call me. It was her way of sort of softening me up, and she had a difficult question that she wanted to ask me, requests. She would call me Mom. When she was mad at me, she would call me Nakia. And so I chose Mama because of that, but also I've always wanted to be a mom.
Right.
I've always wanted to give birth and breastfeed and do all those things that one imagines a mom to do. And I think I wanted that so much because I didn't have that in my mom.
Got you, yeah.
But I'm so happy as a mom. I mean, my kids drive me crazy, but I love it.
I get you. So, we're into the title and we're getting into the craft. How did you decide? And you just said about writing about Jonathan with your team and stuff. But how did you? Let's get into the craft. How did you decide where to start the book? Right. What was the strongest scene in your heart, in your mind? Where do you decide to build the book, and how did you decide where to end it?
It's a good question. So this is like draft 150. So it's changed a lot. I wrote an essay that appeared in an anthology. And that editor I hired to help me with this because we worked really well together. But here at Bard, I carried a lot of shame about where I was from. And I was raised by my grandparents. And I told people that I was gay before I told them that my mom was untruthful.
Right.
I felt more comfortable saying that than, hey, my mom is locked up for selling drugs. But I knew that my story wasn't a singular story. Right? And so what about all the other people who want to go to Bard but feel like they are excluded because of where they come from? Okay. So I wanted to write this story for anyone who wants to learn about, it was cliche, but walking in someone else's shoes.
Sure.
Like I am not.
Or wrestling with shame.
Yeah. Wrestling with, where do I fit in the conversations about prison?
Right.
Yeah. What does it mean to be raised by your grandparents and not parents?
Right.
And then still want to pursue all of your dreams.
Right.
Right? Like I wanted to go away from college. So my mom attended my graduation. That was the only graduation she attended in my entire life.
Wow, that's
was from Bard.
So in this book, you're tackling some really strong themes, right? Some themes that are carrying a lot of heavy feelings and emotions. And you can tread lightly if you want, but what was the hardest part of this book for you to write?
The whole thing.
Okay, fair.
I mean, the whole thing was challenging in different ways. You know, it opens with me driving to Long Island, and I can, I can recall that right now.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was almost 20 years ago. Driving there, the anxiety, the sweat that was like bubbling up on my forehead. Like, what am I going to walk into?
Right.
Is my mother alive? I don't know. Does this kid have all of his fingers and his toes?
Yeah, driving is such a hard thing, especially when you're battling towards the unknown. Like the part where you were going to meet with Carl, man. Like I was white knuckling. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, like
that was hard.
Yeah.
You know.
Don't imagine.
My mom dying was hard.
Right.
I mean, it was all hard in different ways. But I think once you get to the last page of the book, you realize that I wasn't alone through anything.
Right.
You know, even though it felt kind of lonely, there was no way I could go through family court. Now I know. Raise a kid on my own. Right. Then I was like, yeah, I can do it. I don't need anybody.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Right. And just like how you were saying about that, right? Like people say that about writing, that writing is such a solitary sport. And I mean, indeed it is, but also it's kind of not, right? Because like you have friends and editors and people that you can bounce things off of. But when you're doing the thing, it is very solitary. So I get it.
It is solitary, but like you have like your people, right?
Sure.
You have your little board of people.
Yeah, you have your little cohort, your community, right?
Yeah, but you also want people who don't really know you, so you can get true feedback. Unless you're married to my wife, who will give you all of the true feedback, the honest feedback, no matter who you are.
So while you were while you were working during this, you were putting in the miles. Either are you a morning writer? Are you a day writer, night writer, or do you just get it in when you can get it in?
Yeah, before I got pregnant, I was a morning.
Right.
Okay. I would get up 5 a.m. and I would write. And then I would go to work. After having twins, I
so much.
Don't write in the morning. And now I have 2 dogs, Oliver and Edward. And I can't do anything anymore. So now it's like whenever I can write.
Yeah, so like I know like writing can be either a very invigorating thing or a very draining thing, right? So, and I imagine for you, it must have been very draining, right?
It was, and I had to put it down.
Well, my next question was, what did you do for self-care during and after these writing excursions that you undertook?
Yeah. So
these words on paper.
Yeah. So the short answer is I went back to therapy. I found therapy as a student at Bard. Up until college, I'd not dabbled in psychotherapy. And I will say I dabbled here. You know, I wasn't super committed to it. But once I started writing this book, I realized I needed to get back into it.
Right.
And there were a lot of emotions and anxieties I had that I wouldn't have called anxiety.
Right.
And so I went back to therapy and I stayed in therapy and I continue to stay in therapy and I love it. So that's what I do.
What about the age-old question of writing as therapy? Like some people feel better after writing. Some people
aren't trying to get into trouble.
For some people, writing could stir up some pretty heavy feelings and emotions, and even like. So, what kind of writer in that aspect are you?
It's funny because I met my wife in 2000 and 2000 and oh my gosh, when did we meet? 2007. 2007. I don't know why I'm looking at you because you weren't born until 2000. 2007, I met my wife, and up until that relationship with her, I always relied on writing. Like if I had something to say to somebody, I would write it down. Like here you go. It didn't work with her. She was like, no. She's like, we're gonna talk about this,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and so I learned to say what I needed to say in the moment.
Right.
Taken 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
But here we are now. And so I use writing personally, still as a form of therapy, but therapy that I can read again and
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
myself.
Yeah.
I think that writing is one of the best tools we have as individuals to process, to reflect, to convey.
Right.
And you don't have to write a book to utilize it as a therapeutic activity.
Got it. Yeah.
I do believe that whatever you write is not necessarily for all eyes.
Got you. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, just because you put it on paper doesn't mean that someone else has got to read it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What have you learned from writing about yourself that maybe you've never told anyone or
Ooh,
that people don't know?
that is a good question. Hmm. Ask me again, please.
Yeah. So from writing,
Yeah.
right? Like, what have you learned about yourself that you haven't learned maybe not from through not talking with someone? Like, me myself, like, I'm not a talker. Like, I've tried therapy, like, it doesn't work for me, right? Yeah, so I'm not a big believer in therapy, right? I'm one of the people who believes that writing is therapy, right? But there would be a lot of people that would disagree with me, like, "Oh, you're just running away from talking or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
Everybody, like,
Yeah.
does it differently."
Yeah.
But okay, so I that's what I learned about myself through writing. That I'm not a talker. Like, I'm a much more internal, a reflective person. Like, I can work things out with myself.
Yeah.
Rather than working them out with other people. Like, when it's time to come to other people, I run away.
We disagree.
Okay.
I I think writing is a tool,
Right.
and I think um speaking face to face with someone is completely different, and they're different vulnerabilities.
Right.
Right? And
Yeah.
so, putting your words and your feelings and everything down on paper is one thing.
Right.
Yes, you can change. If there's a behavior you could change, sure, you can write it out. But I like going to that person who's an expert and can tell me that
Yeah, sure.
sure.
Yeah.
You know? Um, I would say that I learned about myself that I can't do everything alone.
Okay.
And I have very much done the work with my therapist
Right.
to reinforce that I can't do things alone, even though um I the determination
Right.
and the Aries sign and push through and do the things on my own. It's not a healthy place for me,
Right. And that's real. Yeah.
right? And so um when Jonathan sort of came into the world and the question was like, where does he go from here? I had already like moved us into a house with a white picket fence, and I was baking cookies for him, and I didn't see anybody else in this daydream of mine.
Right.
Fast forward to, I would say, I don't know, third grade for him. I was like, I can never do this alone.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine the weight of being a single. Um, and so I have a profound admiration for people who either do it by choice or fall into their need.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing I learned. So yeah, this
It's great people, yeah. An important lesson to learn.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that I do have control and power over it.
Right. It's great. Yeah. So going back to that this iteration of the book is the 151st. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Talk to me about your revision process, right? Like what kind of
Oh, I hate
revisions
it.
okay.
I hate the editing process.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because you've done all the work and now you have to go back, do it again.
Right.
How long did it take to come up with that one sentence? And you gotta cross it out, and you're like, what? I don't like the process, is the short answer, but I do understand the need for it.
Right.
So when I got my book deal, which was the summer of George Floyd, I had, 4 different offers on the book, and my agent was happy and I was happy, and it was like, we have to make a decision. It was so great, and I was like drinking a glass of wine. So this is great. And then I had to decide which person I was going to go with. And, there's only limited time you have to make this decision. They're not going to wait around for you. And so I looked at editors who optioned the book, who'd been at the publishing house for the longest, and talked to my agent. And so we decided to go with Algonquin Books. And my editor is very sweet and very kind and was very passionate about the book. But we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of the edit.
Right. Okay.
So that made things a little challenging. And so fast forward, I hired another editor by 2. One was based in Toronto, and the other was through the publisher. And so they worked together and we worked together.
Right.
And so this is what we have because of that partnership. After my book went to copy edit, Algonquin merged with the Shep Book Group. And then my editor got laid off.
I think government be telling
you. Yeah. So that was before the book came out. Well, it was tough. It was a journey.
Right, right.
So I got the book deal in 2020. Things sort of really started in 2021, and then the book came out in 2024.
Right.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think you did. You were very helpful, and I think that I love how you said that's your journey. I took that away from that, and everybody has their own journey, and also the same thing back to like the therapy thing, right? Even when you're such a talented author such as yourself, right? No one could do it alone, right? No. So it's just like it takes a village. The same way it takes a village to raise a kid, it takes a village to
write a book.
To write a book, yeah.
No one ever read my stuff, and I just started publishing. Like that doesn't happen,
right?
Like you don't sit down and write the book, and
no, this is great stuff for me to hear. So the other day we were talking again, like always, right? And you were telling me about. I'm going to put this in layman's term. How your memory sucks.
My memory does suck,
right? Yeah. But I was so surprised because I know a lot of things that happen in your life and stuff like with that I never received. Right? Yeah. That's what happens when you know someone for like 20 years, right?
True.
But I was surprised with the accuracy with that everything was laid out, the timeline and just. The way everything. How did you go about that? How did you research and fact check
the editing process?
Right,
the editing process. Yeah. So
I'm sorry. And how surprised were you when? And I think this happens to everyone, right? It's like when you have this solidified memory that you would bet your life savings on, and you go back and you research it, and you was like, I could have sworn my firstborn child that this was, like how surprised were you when you got something wrong, and then how much did it derail you when you had to correct it? Because I'm sure that happened, a couple times.
Yeah, so I remember the big things, the details that I had a hard time with.
Sure.
So I mentioned I have a very critical wife, and so she read the book multiple times, and she was my first editor, and so she helped me sort of um, hone in on the pieces that I'd forgotten.
Right.
For things like there's a scene in the book where my um, my maternal grandmother and biological grandfather, it was their first marriage. They produced 6 children, one of which was my mom. But they had an argument and a fight. And I was like nowhere in anybody's imagination at that time, but they were all kids. And so I didn't know the details of that argument, obviously. And so I picked up my cell phone and I went back to our family group text and I said, "Hey guys, I'm at this part in the book. Can you guys tell me what happened?"
Right.
Everyone who responded had a different version, but it was a way for me to go back and say, okay, well, so and so said this. Do you remember it like this? And so,
Cross reference.
yeah, you have to cross reference. And then at one point, you're just like, this has got to be the story.
Right.
And then you have to figure out which details need to be in that story.
Right.
Right. So I wanted readers to see my biological grandparents or my maternal grandparents for who they were, what the family dynamics, whether or not it was a mountain bike or you know, 3-tire bike or whatever it was. That doesn't matter. She wrote a whole story.
Yeah.
So that was, the family.
They're allowed to be malleable
Right.
sometimes in memoir.
This is
This is
that's like one of the things. And then the things I really, really needed to get right, obviously, were like going to family court and what was that like and what happened. And that's cool because I have documents.
right. Yeah. And those always come in helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Were was there were there any things, right? And I'm not asking you to divulge here. You don't have to, of course not. Well, were there, because this is the 151st edition of the book, right? But were there any things that you originally had in the book and later on through the editing process and or through cross-referencing you decided that you had to leave out because it didn't fit or it just wasn't right?
No, no. When I started writing this book, I said I'm going to tell the truth,
Okay.
whatever that truth is. And there are certain things I won't talk about.
Okay.
Like I won't talk about intimacy.
Sure.
I won't. I mean, I sort of do it.
Yeah, no, but you did it with your own set of rules, your own
right
constraints. So that's very important.
I will talk about those things, and then I talk about my in-laws. I talk about my mother-in-law a lot.
Okay.
And so I had to give her that chapter. It's like, so what do you think? So they had like I wasn't invited. But they had like a family meeting and like to really say, okay, I'm okay with this, or I'm not okay with that, or that's not how I remember it, and
Right.
so we had those conversations. But I can honestly say that everything I wrote was okay with people.
You felt happy that you got it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's more to say. Um,
That's for the sequel.
when the book came out and I got the galleys, I wanted to take a photo with my daughters, and then they opened it up. They're like, "Hey, this is for Jonathan. Where's our book?" So the next one will be dedicated to my daughters. Yes.
So after everything was said and done, and after all the researching and cross referencing and interviewing, did this book change the way you look at yourself and your family, your the way you parent, the way you live as a person?
Mm, I don't think it's no. I don't think it's changed me in that way. What's been difficult is like selling myself as like an imposter. Jonathan, who the book is about, worked in the bookstore his winter break last year. So I was like, thank God. It's like I have someone to like cover for me for a week. And so he texts me halfway through, and I'm like, oh gosh, like what happened? And he says, why is your book not on the counter? Like, why is it not here? And I was like, oh, it's on the shelf, you know? He's like, no, it needs to be front and center. And I was like, I guess so, you know, like, but it's a bookstore. Like, there are other authors that there's me, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's been the hardest part for me of just like, selling books because it feels a lot like selling myself.
Right. Yeah, I can respect that.
So that's been hard. But
Sometimes it takes a minute though to get that muster that courage and put it in the front. Hey,
I mean,
this is me and this is what I did.
still a challenge.
I'll pick it up.
I have a
You're
country.
getting it. You're getting it.
Why is you?
So,
But I think they might.
yeah. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or you call out. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, I'm curious about when it was that you felt like, did you always feel like a mother? Did it come naturally? Is there a moment where you became hyper aware of the shift in your identity of become from being an individual or student, a daughter to being a mother?
Yeah. I think my Bardians would tell me that I was always the mother. I remember it was our first year. And I lived in Wolves. I forget the dorm is right now.
Mhm.
But my friends lived in the one that's right next door. And so they came over to get me to go to a party at Robin's, I think. And I was like, guys, it's 10 o'clock. It's a bed. And they're like, what? Like they like laughed at me and laughed at me. And yeah, I never went to a late party. So, I've always felt motherly and I mothered my mom. So the shift is now my expectations changed of the person that I'm mothering, you know? Like I still mother my wife in some days, I'm like, oh, dinner's ready, like I'm very nurturing. Um, and that's just who I am. And I think my grandmother taught me a lot about how to nurture people, and like food was always a big thing in our house. And I've brought that into the bookstore, because we have community suppers, and invite folks in for a meal. And I, yeah, so I've always been nurturing. I think, the sort of mama bear came out, after going to family court to fight for Jonathan. We ultimately were able to adopt him. Um, but it wasn't until that adoption, he was 8 years old, that we could breathe and breathe into the fact that we were his moms. Because up until that point, it was touch and go. He could take it away. Foster care could decide that they're going to take him. It was a very difficult back and forth with his biological father. And so it wasn't until we stood in front of the judge and he got my wife's last name, that it felt final. But I've never considered him my half brother or anything other than my son. And now I have the gray hair to beat it.
Um, so this book speaks powerfully to queerness, Black womanhood, loss, and chosen family, right? Which of those themes surprised you the most while you were writing about them? And what did they teach you about resilience?
That's a heavy question. Um, I think we go about life in ways that allow us sometimes to wear a veil.
Okay.
And keep things sort of quiet or preserved, in Black or African Americans household, whatever happens in your house stays in your house, right? And no one goes to a therapist, like you got God, what's up, right? And so I think um, knowing that I needed to talk about grief, I needed to talk about queerness, I needed to talk about shame and trauma and generational trauma. Um, my Blackness was something that I couldn't hide behind, right? And I think that I don't talk a lot about in the book, about being a black person, because I think the other pieces, the other themes, are the ones that we can hide behind.
Right.
And I think those are the ones that need to be.
Got you. I love that. And right. So now, like after having written the book and becoming a published author, how has this shaped your responsibility? Do you feel like you have a responsibility to speak up more on these themes to your readers?
I do.
Right.
I do. And I think it's only fair. I mean, I'm of the mind now that I'm an adult. um, we don't talk about we don't talk about the hard things, or we don't talk about different families, or my wife is South Asian, she's Sri Lankan. Being gay in Sri Lanka, and the government finds out, it's gone. You're dead. You're gone. Right? And so, does everyone know that? Probably not. And so, um, we in my household, my family of five, we talk a lot about feelings and how our actions impact other people.
Right.
And so, um, so I want to set the example for my kids.
Right.
Similar to how my wife sets the example for me of like, speak up, speak your mind, because we all will benefit from that.
Yeah, I like that. So, what do you hope that?
That's accent.
Oh, you have forgive me.
Because I think you and I can say,
Please feel free to interrupt and jump in. I'm not. Yeah, you don't have to raise your hand. You just get and talk.
I'm wondering, and please let me know if this is too much of a loaded question, but I'm wondering what your relationship is now with your mother. While she was here, perhaps it was a certain way, and now I'm still wondering if you can just share with them what that should in connection.
Yeah. I was angry at her. I was angry at her when she died. I was angry at her when she gave birth to a fourth child. I was angry that she relapsed. I was angry that she left me with the shit show of like, the father to Jonathan. So I was angry for a very long time. And I still dip back into my angriness sometimes. But it's an ongoing struggle, I would say. She's been gone for 19 years. But I'm surprised at how easily I can fall back into being angry and annoyed. I was giving a book talk a few months ago, and a similar question came up, and in that moment, I was like, "I'm fine, no worries, we're fine. I've dealt with it. I've forgiven her. I have forgiven her, but I'm also still angry with her." And that saying I am angry with her took me a long time to say, because I felt guilty for saying that, because she was, she probably had her own mental health issues that just went undiagnosed. She was born in 1964, So, yeah, so I try to be okay with being angry. Yeah.
Hi. I'm wondering how your journey of raising your son shifted your perspective about your own childhood and your own relationship. I know it's still on your mother, but I'm more curious on how maybe like some wisdom may have come from like your instinct, or kind of like, I know you talked about like the imagination of like breastfeeding and carrying.
Yeah.
Here's how like other things that you desire, we desire from our childhoods, or just desire as people, kind of inform our instincts and like a sense of like what's right and how to fix, how to lead. I'm just curious to speak to your practice as a mother.
Yeah. So Jonathan was born in November, and I met my now wife that August, September. And we met online and we were chatting, and I told her exactly who I was, what I had, all the baggage, and she did the same. And so we made plans for our first date, and she's like, "Bring Jonathan." I was like, "No, like who brings a kid to your first date, right?" And so luckily everything went well on the first date. And so by the third one, she's like, "Okay, bring him." And I was like, "No, it's not time yet, right?" And so I think that was the starting point of me realizing that I could also have a love life and be a mom. Initially, when I took on the responsibility, I didn't think that was a possibility. I didn't think anyone would want to love somebody with the complicated baggage that I came with. He was my first. He was my priority. And I told my wife in our email exchange, I was like, "I want to have a baby." And she was like, "I want to be a priest." And I was like, "Huh?" Right? I was like, "Okay." But I brushed it off. She brushed off the baby. Fast forward, I brought it up again, like, "I want to have a baby." So we started the IVF process. He started the process to become a priest. And the first IVF didn't work. And then the second we got twins. And so I got my babies. I got to be pregnant, and she was there for the ride. And so it was, I feel like I birthed Jonathan anyway because of all of the fighting that we had to do to get him, to keep him. Uh, uh, he has special needs, but um, we went through a lot, and it was more painful than the C-section I had. Um, so I even though I didn't carry him in my body, I carried him in my heart. And sometimes my heart broke, and I had to put it back together. Again, I couldn't do it alone, but
Right.
um, he's my first kid, and probably has texted me now because he wants some money.
So, what do you hope um, a reader takes away and carries with them after reading your book?
The same thing that I know now is that you can't do it again.
Right.
Whatever it is, you can't do it. As much as you maybe have the stamina to do it, the resilience to do it, you'll be better for it by not doing it alone. And so I decided to go to Bard uh, because on my tour, I was told about Drag Race. And I was like, "Oh my God, there is a place."
Maybe I know what that.
Yep. Oh,
Like RuPaul's Drag Race or
oh no, but that would be fun too.
Mhm.
They don't know what Drag Race is. What did it stop?
you have to explain.
Okay, Drag Race was a party in which you bring a person of the same sex and you go to that party and you just represent. And you don't have to be queer to bring a date of the same gender. That was it.
Was that the coming out the closet party?
Not for me.
No.
No, I-
Wasn't there like a party here like every semester where like people jump
Well, I
up?
mean,
Was it? Was
well,
it-
I mean, maybe you're thinking of Drag Race. I remember Drag Race.
Yeah.
Just
It's 20 years ago.
oh yeah, that's
More.
long ago. Yeah. And so so I decided to come because of Drag Race.
Yeah.
There was a point, and now I'm forgetting what this point was. Drag Race. Oh well, it'll go there.
Sorry. Well, feel free to drop it in whenever it comes back. Let's move on to the next question, right? So you seem to have accomplished a lot tackling that book, and you seem to have gotten a certain amount of closure and but what are you looking towards next? What are you dreaming of accomplishing next?
So I would venture to say that there's no closure.
Okay, that's fair.
And I would say that because it's a memoir, but also, um,
But you've made some pretty serious accomplishments.
no, I'm happy with my
Yeah.
accomplishments for sure. And my wife says I can't do anything else. Like I've got to stop putting goals out there and just stay with one. So, I'm gonna make this bookstore successful.
Right.
But I also need to write another book. So I'm trying.
Yeah, like, do you feel with this book you've said
I've said everything
everything you needed to say?
said everything I needed to say, and I think Jonathan is pretty done with all that I
So
said.
do you think your next book will be nonfiction, or
My next book,
maybe it would be easier to say if you ventured into the fiction world?
so I'm gonna venture into the fiction world.
Okay.
So there are two ideas I have. One, my agent is more apt to say yes to, but the second book I think is going to be a novel about a group of hospital chaplains and their relationships with one another, and, and then their relationship about faith,
That,
how that interferes with how they show up for their patients.
that,
Loosely based on my wife John as a chaplain.
that's fair.
Usually photographers don't speak, but
Hey, yes, you do.
Yeah.
Okay, speak on. Yeah.
but you have a lot of love. And writing this book is sharing that love, whether it be to parents, Black people, women, Black women, the queer community, and even to your next book. Do you feel forced to give out that love to other women, to parents, to people who have had difficult relationships with their parents? My own mother had that same very, very difficult relationship with her parents, and she gave a second chance to my grandfather to be a better grandfather than a father.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel forced to give out that love, that you owe something to those communities to speak on them?
That's a fabulous question. And one that I've not thought about. Honestly. I don't feel forced to give it out. And I think that's because everyone's on their own journey. While I think I check off a lot of boxes as a queer and Black woman, mom of multiples. I mean, like there are a lot of little boxes that I check off, but in the end, the reason that I continue to write and to share that is so that people can see me for me. And if they want to reach out, they can. But I don't feel that I either owe it to anyone to both share my story, or I don't feel mandated to help them through their own. Though I do hope that by my sharing my own, that they will feel better about theirs in some way. But emotions are tricky. Families are tricky, and you go on your own journey. And my wife grew up in a two parent household, mom, dad, brother. From the outside, she had the life I wanted. Now that I know, some of her life, um, we have our own struggles. Granted, my baggage is heavier than hers, but her family, they left a country during the Civil War, and she saw some horrific things. So I don't know if that answers your question. Judy, another.
That was a great
Yeah.
answer. That was a great question.
Yeah.
Listen, when I was here, I was a photography major, so photographers do speak.
Yeah. Yes.
I think
Keep speaking.
judging by that question, I think you're going to go on to do great things. So keep on speaking and keep on asking those questions.
I not a heavy question, just to sort of like challenge. You said you went on book tour. I just want to know a little bit what that's like. You're in like a van, you're on they give you money, they don't buy the books, people else buy questions. It's crazy.
It's a crazy process. So once the book goes to copy edits and then you get your galley, once the book goes to copy edits, you have a meeting with the lawyer at the publishing house, and you go through parts of your book that could cause a lawsuit for them. And so you have that conversation with the lawyer, and they either say, okay, we need to go and change this or change that, or hey, everything's fine. So luckily, I didn't have to change anything because I'd already changed identifying pieces. And if the person is dead, you don't have to worry about it. You're good. And so as part of the tour process, you're assigned a publicist. You're assigned a team, marketing team, publicist. And it feels great because you're like on this call with like all of these people. For me, it was on Zoom. And then you have your date set that mostly your publicist is responsible for setting. For me, I wanted to go to Atlanta because a fellow Bardian, the executive director at a bookstore in Atlanta, and my cousin lives there. So I put that on their radar. And they're like, fine, you go anywhere you want as long as you pay for it. So I was able to speak up and negotiate for myself. My tour was basically the New England area. So I went to New York, Maryland.
The clam and lobster belt.
Yes, exactly. Virginia. I went to a bunch of places, and I drove to Maryland, and I took my daughter Avia with me. And so we stayed in a hotel. We were at the Enoch and Pratt Library, and then we flew to Atlanta, and I had to pay for that, but they paid for everything else. So mostly, but yeah, it was tiring.
Yeah.
It was some of it was scary. We were flying. We were at the library in Baltimore. Had a great book talk, the best one I think say of the whole tour. And our flight was really early, and so my daughter and I get up, head out to the parking garage, and there was a man just on the ground, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think he's dead. And I go back into the hotel, and they're like, we'll walk you out. So they walked us to the car, and they're like, no, he's not dead. He's fine. It's random and weird, but it was stereotypical Baltimore. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was stereotypical. Yeah, it was exactly like The Wire.
But which I've never seen.
No, you know what?
Yeah, and everyone's still you're watching.
You saw Brokeback Mountain, but not The Wire.
That's from school. Yeah. Yeah, but I think that the business the business of promoting a book and selling a book is something that's not talked about enough. Well,
You as the author, unless you're, Wally Lamb or Elizabeth Gilbert or Roxanne Gay, you've got to sell your book.
right. So
That's it.
if
But yeah,
yeah, go ahead, please jump in.
I mean, maybe is kind of a segue because I'm curious about your life as a bookstore owner, as an independent bookstore owner. You've alluded a little bit to the kind of community you create there, and that it came around the same time that the book came around, and so you sell your book, bookstores sell books, but how maybe what brought you to that place, and how that kind of fits together with you as a writing author.
Yeah, it's like the synergy. Like, what kind
yeah.
of flow does it create?
So I, like most readers, love books for their emotional support they provide us with. And I love bringing community together. Um, whether that is yes through a book or if it's through an event at a bookstore, because I think the two are necessary. Um, I Whenever I go on vacation or anywhere outside of Stratford, we go to a bookstore. Jonathan spent his whole, I don't know, 1 through 9 years old, I guess. So we were at Barnes and Noble like every weekend. And so it's a place of refuge for me and my family, and I wanted to recreate that for other people. Um, we are in a town of 52,000 people, give or take. Um, and it's a small town that's stuffed between a large city, which is Bridgeport, and then Milford, which is similar to Stratford, with no bookstore. And I freelance for a blog, and it's focused on social and emotional learning, and that is what the bookstore is rooted in. And so there are pillows and workshops and all those things that have a through line of SEL. And so, without telling people, like explicitly saying, you know, how you doing, it's subtly placed around the store. And so I run a writer's workshop.
Yes.
And we start every cohort with um, in the bookstore, and we light a candle and we just center ourselves before we start writing, and that has been a true gift. But even today, I was in the bookstore this morning, and I normally open at noon. Today, I was like, I'm opening early because I'm going to bar, right? And I posted about it on social media. And a group of kids, high school, an alternative high school, show up at my door at 10 o'clock. And their staff brought them in, and they wrote a piece about the bookstore in their school magazine. And they brought it as a gift to me. And it just happened that most of them are queer. And I had one book about CPTSD in a store, and someone picked it up and she brought it. And they were like, "Whose book is this?" They were like calling her out basically, and she was like, "It's mine." And I was like, "I got CPTSD too," and then everyone else was like, "Me too." Like, it was such a like reaffirming moment for me, and that was just today, and I mean that's what keeps me going because my wife is like, "When are you going to put food on the table? Like, when is the bookstore going to bring in some money?" I was like, "It is here too. Give me time."
So, all right, maybe we should start winding it down, right? Because time's getting on for this. But
She has another.
yeah.
To speak to the power of writing, I have a journal that I've had for like 10 years now. And the other day I looked at my first entry and I was stunned at the fact that like I basically manifested so much. I'm usually kind of terrified of looking at more entries. But I'm curious if you've had that experience of realizing like the power of writing and if you've manifested things or if you've consciously.
I'm all about manifesting things. Yeah. My wife will say, "Stop." You know, done. Like I had just started this role uh, as executive director of a nonprofit in our town, and it came to me by a weird way. Like our now mayor ran this organization and can't now, so it's in my lap. And my wife was like, "You're gonna run for political office next." I was like, "No, I'm not. Like that is a hard no. Like I see the line." But I'm all about manifesting. And I have journals that I go back to. I had to for the book. And in it, every entry I end with some reference to God. And I realized that I was also angry at God. And sometimes I still am, but we're getting better.
So
Yeah.
yeah. I maybe want to ask like two more questions. But for writers coming from backgrounds like ours, right? And I mean, just writers who are wanting to come out as writers. What advice do you have for them?
Just right. Just right.
Yeah,
Just right. Right. So I tell folks in my cohort to write what you want to write.
right.
Write what
Correct.
you want to write. Because once you write that, you can go back. You don't have to edit it, but you can go back and read it and say, okay, yes, this is what I want to write. This is what brings me joy. Because the last thing you want to do is get into writing and write for something you don't want. Right? Like, sure, it'd be nice to get $100 for that article. 300 would be better. So you might not get any.
Yeah, no.
Right? So
I think I asked that question wrong. I know that answer. Right.
wait, what?
That's I think I messed this question up. But like, what do you want writers such as ourselves, right, or writers who want to come out
Come out what?
as writers in this industry? What do you want them to know about that industry? Because that's
that's a different.
yeah,
It's hard.
I think I messed it up 100%.
It's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard,
yeah.
and rejection. Get comfortable with it.
Oh,
Get comfortable with criticism, which I
right.
hate.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's part of life, right? And so, this book didn't just like appear in 4 years.
Right.
I started freelancing.
Didn't get rejected. Right. Yeah.
Right. I started freelancing. I worked on my proposal for 2 years. I hired someone. Like, there was money put into that, and thankfully, I make connections,
Right.
network, and don't burn bridges. Do not burn bridges. You never know. You never know when you have to go back to somebody.
Right. Yeah.
Never. So that's my advice. Don't burn bridges.
That's great advice. Yeah.
And manifest.
Right.
Say it. I'm going to publish a book. And I had said on book tour, I was like, oh, this is my what did I say? I said, this is my book or something like that. Or I said, if I get a next book. And someone said, no, this is your first book and your second book is coming. And I was like, sure, yeah, we'll go with that, But it doesn't always feel like that. Like, even now, like, I have this idea for book number 2 and I have 1 page.
Right.
And for your fiction, for your novel, you need to finish the book before you get a book deal. So that's not coming for some time. So, that's what I want people to know.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions before we call it a day?
I just want to know how you guys met. You obviously got a good relation. What is what happened? Did you meet each other in
I mean,
in front of clients. Well, his whole family went through bar.
Yeah, like my younger brother graduated from bar. My younger sister graduated from bar.
Sister-in-law.
Okay, this is embarrassing. I'm the alumni director.
Yeah.
So, dance.
You Google me, you can find me.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But I was just talking here. I also came up through the HEOP program here. And I think I was like 20 years old when I came to bar. I joined the Marines when I was 17. And when 9/11 came, I was here on campus. And a couple months later, the Marines called me up and said, hey, bud, we need you to fulfill your contract.
You have to do it.
And
You have to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I signed a contract when I was 17 years old. So I was here at BARD on the Montgomery GI Bill. And I think at the time I might have been maybe like the third military student to attend BARD or something like that. Like you guys would have to check that with the stuff. But yeah.
So
and that's how
right.
And then I never came back.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I mean when I finished with my service, they asked me to come back, and I said yes. And I was like this close to coming back, and then the NYPD called me, and I became a cop, and I never came back. But that's another story, and maybe some other time.
It's that story,
Yeah.
that NYPD story that reconnected us.
Right. Yeah.
And then we just started, I don't know, chatting about writing.
Yeah.
Fat at Bard.
We met here at the Bard, and then when her book was coming out, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm at NYU and I'm doing an MFA, and I just finished writing a book." And
Yeah.
but like I said, this time is about her. That's another
Yeah, but his book is coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And how year's conversation. Yeah. So
But yeah, guys, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is very funny. Yeah. Make sure that you guys add me to the next email anytime that you guys are having.
Yeah.
I would love to come up and
Yeah.
keep on talking and sharing, and maybe even if there are other authors from Bard, I'd love to sit down and politics.
Yeah, to be a serious.
Yeah, who knows?
yes,
Thank you.
you guys have questions.
Fun. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nice job.